And, once you start noticing things like the way water moves and, rock pools and light on water and sea foam and, all these things, like once you start, it just opens this world of, like a window, I suppose, into like how incredible nature is.
Welcome to the Swim Chats podcast. I'm Shona Riddell, a writer, former journalist and ocean swimmer from Wellington, Aotearoa, New Zealand. For each episode, I'll feature a different guest from our swim community. They'll be dippers, adventure swimmers, coaches and conservationists with one thing in common. They all love being in the sea. So whether you're a swimmer yourself or just interested in stories about the ocean and people expanding their comfort zones, I hope you enjoy these swim chats. Please hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Adrienne Linney is an ocean swimmer, a jewellery maker, and the founder of BBBs, which is a dipping group here in Wellington that started about 3 years ago. And It's now a thriving community of women who dip in pretty much all weather conditions and through every season. Adrienne, welcome to Swim Chats.
Thank you, Shona. It's a privilege to be here.
Thank you. It's a privilege to have you. When I was writing the introduction, I was trying to decide whether to use the word dip or bob. And I was wondering, do you have a preference? And is there any difference between them?
Well, honestly, when we started the group, we didn't call ourselves bobbers. I don't know what we were really. I just set up the group and said Better Beach Babes. And then the sort of story behind us calling it bobbing was I think we'd only maybe done it 2 or 3 times. There was not very many of us. And we were out in the water and a woman wandered by and about our age. And the next thing she sort of comes charging down the beach and called out to us and said, "Are you a bobbing group?" And we all sort of looked at each other and went, yeah, yeah, I guess so. And she said, "Oh my God, I've been wanting a bobbing group." And she said, "Do you mind if I join you?" And we said, No, go on. And so she was in her running gear, walking gear. So she just whipped her shorts and t-shirt off and plunged in her brown undies, which was, awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Is she still in the group?
She comes and goes. But she disappeared for a little bit at the start, and then she eventually came back wearing a bikini. And she said, "Oh, I decided I'd buy a bikini because I thought if I can do it in my brown undies, I can do it in a bikini." So
yeah, well, that's right.
Bikini. So it was awesome. Yeah. So from then on, we were bobbers. And yeah.
And I think that is a great way to describe it, isn't it? Because you get in and you're sort of either chest deep or slightly deeper, but not doing the full overarm or backstroke or any of that. It's just you're literally sort of bobbing up and down in the water, often especially if it's choppy, chatting, which is really a beautiful way to start the day. And I was thinking, I think that's how I first met you, is when I showed up to the Better Beach Babes. I literally just started getting in the sea and I was looking around to see if anyone else was doing it. And I think autumn had just begun and it was my first time swimming past summer, and I felt very intrepid getting in past summer. And and so it was just really nice to have this group of like really happy, welcoming people. And it's very casual, and if you don't show up, it doesn't matter. Nobody says, "Oh, where were you?" or that you're not paying a member's fee or anything. It's just
no. I did find for a while there, for probably about the first year or so after we started, if I ran into any woman that would normally be there if I was out walking or something, and the first thing they would do would be to say, "Oh, I didn't make it today," or like come up. And in the end, I just sort of would have to say, "Look, honestly, it just doesn't matter.
It's okay."
Half the time I hadn't been there either, so I'd be going, "Really? Well, I wasn't there either." So and I think that's the beauty of it, is you can pardon the pun, dip in and dip out. It's life, allows you to do that.
Exactly. And sometimes it's necessary, right? Because everybody has other things going on. And and I feel like the Better Beach Babes have become a little bit famous on the peninsula, because even if people don't know the name, people who meet me and hear that I'm a swimmer, they'll say, "Oh, I've heard that there's this group of women who
Yes.
get in the sea," and it's like this sort of mysterious.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're sort of
I,
intrigued.
I think, when we started, I don't recall there being any other groups that I noticed. But since then, I think it has, like certainly since COVID and things, it's definitely, taken off as a thing. And there's a group in Hotatai, and I think there's a group that goes out in Ballina Bay. And I know there's a group in Island Bay and Lyle Bay. So, there's, most of the bays, I think you'd find, depending on the time of day, there'll be a group of people doing it, which wasn't the case, sort of 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. So what was the inspiration for you behind starting the group?
Well, what had happened for me was my history was that I had been a long-term wetsuit wearer. So, from all of the last 35 years of swimming, I was very much a wetsuit person. Even on summer holidays with my kids up north, I would be the one in the short wetsuit going in with my kids in their togs because I was such a wimp. And so I had gone through a winter of discovering that I could do it, which was, but as you know, it's sort of a little bit of a journey, and for quite a long time, you you know you don't think you can, because you just think that those people that do wear skins have some sort of special, a special thing that allows them to do it that you don't have. um, so I had gone through that whole process, and I had done a winter of swimming in skins, and I think probably anyone that met me, I was telling, I was that really annoying person that I can't a zealot, it was like, I swam today. And so I'd run into people around and about Seatoon, and I would, of course, have this conversation. I swam today, and I just found that I would keep having a similar conversation with local women who would say, "Oh, yeah, I wish I could go in. Like I've lived here for, it's such a long time, and I look at the sea, and it's just amazing, and I just never really feel like I can go in." And a few of us remembered a group of women who used to do it, back in I guess it was the 90s that I recalled them. And they were a group of older women who met down at the beach there. And I remember walking past them and thinking they were absolutely crazy, and they would call out and go, "Come on in, it's great." And at that wee beach there's a couple of seats that are dedicated to a couple of the women that did that, and they died in the early 2000s, about 2003, and I think one was in her mid-90s and the other was in her mid-80s. And so in the course of these conversations, there was a few of us that did remember those women, and it just sort of started as an idea, really. It was, well, maybe when the weather warmed up and the water warmed up, we could have a go at starting a group and seeing whether, anyone wanted to come. And so I thought, because I knew how cold it was, that we would wait until the water temperature got to 15 degrees, which, as you know, can be quite a long wait in Wellington. And I sort of had visions that we would start about October or November, and I kept, checking the water temperature, and it was determinedly at, 13 or 14. And anyway, around about, I think it was about November, late November or early December, we hit the 15-degree mark. And so I'd started this Facebook group, and I just sent invitations to the woman that I knew, that I'd had the conversation with. And I guess they probably felt like they had to turn up. um, and so it just sort of spread like that. They came, and then they would invite people or tell people. And, I guess it's quite exciting, like it's so invigorating. You feel so empowered by doing it. And that was the amazing thing, really, was just seeing. And also for me, that's what I had found with getting rid of my wetsuit, that the feeling of empowerment that comes from knowing that you can go in the water, and you can really go in any body of water wherever you are, is quite amazing. And for these women, it was, I guess it was the same, but what I hadn't factored into it, which I found quite humbling, was for me, I had spent years and years swimming. I'd in and out of pools and beaches and things. And so for me, putting my togs on and being seen in my togs was nothing. I was used to it. I'm used to being around swimmers in every shape and size, and we just get in and we do what we do. But I had not really factored in that for a lot of women, particularly women who have had children and that are getting middle-aged or whatever, aren't that confident about putting their togs on and being seen in their togs, and for some of them they haven't done it for a very long time. And so that was a thing I hadn't thought about, and and it took, I think, for a lot of them quite a lot of courage to do that aspect of it before they were even in the water, and that was great.
Yeah. And well, first of all, I love that you've carried on this tradition of the older swimmers who started in the 90s.
Yeah.
And they were in their 80s, right? And so it's nice to sort of have this inspiring idea of, something we can do when we're older as well.
Oh, yeah. And we now have two 80-year-olds.
Oh, do you?
And we celebrated them. We had a sort of a surprise 80th birthday party for them, which, in order to do it, we called it Christmas drinks because it was around Christmas time, but actually it was a celebration for the two of them, and they were quite hilarious because we had 80th balloons up and various things, and neither of them twigged that it was for them.
Oh.
So we have two 80-year-olds now, so that's fantastic. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, because that was one of the things I was going to ask you is if you think the group has changed much in the last 3 years. And I suppose one of the obvious changes would be that, yes, I mean, people are getting older and entering new decades. But sort of overall, do you feel like, has it grown dramatically, or is it?
It went through, I think there's probably a core of maybe 15 to 20 women who would call themselves regulars, who are seriously regular.
Yeah.
And they would be, a lot of those women probably from the original group that have now done 3 winters, or they've been in that mix. And then there's a bunch of newer women. We had a sort of a flurry. We got featured in the Women's Weekly.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that in a minute. I've got a copy right here.
And then following that, we sort of had, I think, and I think Fee may have been interviewed on something, and she mentioned it, and we had a sort of flurry of new people around summertime. And I remember one morning going down there, and I just was blown away by the number of people that were in the water. I could hear them before I even got there.
That's awesome.
And a few of the regulars sort of looked at each other and went, "Oh yeah, we'll see whether they're here in winter," kind of thing. And a lot of them didn't stay around, but that's not to say that they aren't still doing it, because I think what has happened was we were sort of, for a few women, we were almost like a starter group. So they would come to us, and then they would discover that there was something closer to where they lived, and then carry on doing it there. Yeah.
You mentioned the Women's Weekly article, which I happen to have a copy of here. I know this is an audio. Oh, I can't. Oh, there we are. I know this is an audio podcast.
Oh, yes, there we are.
But there is an online version that I can link to in the show notes if anyone wants to read the article.
Yeah.
So this was from 2022 in the national women's magazine, New Zealand Women's Weekly. And so that was when the group was relatively new, I suppose. Was that the first winter? And possibly?
Yes, I think we would be coming to the end, or maybe it was about August, I think. Was it?
Yeah, it was definitely winter.
Yeah, I think it was our first winter. Yeah.
A lot of people have their woolly hats on.
Yeah, yeah.
You're in the picture, of course, because you're the founder, and I was there too. And I remember, as you were talking earlier about, how being on the beach in togs can be quite a vulnerable experience for some people. And so let alone being in a national magazine, right?
Yeah.
In your swimwear. So I remember
And
finding that quite empowering.
Yeah.
In a way that, because I was relatively new to swimming as well. And it's like, well, if I can be in my togs in a magazine, then, and the world keeps turning.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it's quite a good feeling.
I remember feeling a little horrified when I saw it come out because I didn't realize we were going to be on the front page. And
yes,
when the photographer, when we were having those photos, I remember, and he kept pulling me out to the front and sort of getting me to stand or, do, and I was thinking, oh. and I, and I, in the end, I thought, oh, well, it doesn't really matter, I guess I'll just be inside a magazine, who's ever going to see it, and I got sent the proof photos and looked at them all, and I thought we all looked amazing. And of course, then the magazine came out and I went in to pick it up off the shelf and discovered that we're on the front page. And then I did have that moment where I thought, Adrienne, like I think someone said to me, you're the only one surprised by that, because everyone else has seen you in your togs forever,
Yeah.
And I thought, well, yeah, that's true, actually. It's just, all I'm doing is now seeing what everyone else sees. So I guess, get over yourself.
Yeah, that's right. And like you say, I think we all do look good. We're all perched on a rock like mermaids, in the morning light. And
And remember that day the wind was coming in and the waves were sort of, hitting the people that were all the women that were at the back, and everyone's sort of trying to stay warm and
not fall off the rock. Yeah. It was all part of the fun. And I remember when the magazine came out and going to the local Foursquare, and the owner, had the magazine there, and he said, "This is a, local group." And I said, "Yeah, I'm in the picture." And he was like, "What?" He didn't recognize me because I had my big hat on.
Yeah.
But so like you said, there are lots of dipping groups around, and it just seems to be picking up more and more, I've noticed. But like you mentioned before that you were sort of an ocean swimmer before the group was established, and which is kind of the opposite to me. I started off as a dipper and then I started swimming a longer distance. So do you have a preference between the two? Do you prefer swimming further, or do you enjoy the balance of dipping and swimming?
I think I prefer the swimming. I found the bobbing thing to start with quite unusual, for me, because I'm used to getting in the water and just putting my head down and going. And so not doing that felt, quite different for me. And it is a completely different experience, and it's quite, reflective and, it is very different. But I think it just depends on where you're at, the day, how you're feeling, how your body's feeling. I mean, like when we, swim in Freiburg and then we go for a dip after we've had a swim, it's just lovely to just sort of bob around a bit and just do a little bit of swimming, but not a whole lot. Um, and I love going down to that little beach where we do the bobbing when I'm completely on my own, like just to have that moment, which, feels quite meditative, where it's just you and the sea and the seagulls and and so I think, but I think probably because my background is in swimming, I like the challenge of, just stroking out and getting going.
Yeah. Were you at the beach the day the orcas showed up?
No.
Oh no. Sorry, that's
No.
a triggering question then, eh?
Yeah, well, it's funny because you hear stories of people having these encounters, and I've never had an encounter like, like that with a big, sea, creature, other than a couple of weeks ago up in Lee where I, came face to face with a stingray, which just scared the living daylights out of me. So I don't know, like I'd like to think I'd be calm, but I'm just not sure that I would be.
I'm not sure either. Yeah, I know what you mean
Mhm.
because they are majestic, beautiful creatures, but they're also apex predators. Yeah. So I
Yeah,
would have that in my mind as well.
yeah,
They're a lot
yeah.
bigger than us. But
Mm.
yeah, it's I mean that's I guess one of the unpredictable things about getting in the sea, isn't it, versus the pool? Like each day feels in the sea feels like a new adventure.
Yeah, and that's what is so fantastic about it. You're getting into like you're just in nature and it's bigger than you and it's just part of the experience.
Yeah. And I know you've had some overseas swim experiences where you've been on swim camps and
Yeah.
whatnot. Do you have a favorite swim or particular parts of the world or New Zealand that you love swimming in?
Um, Years ago, the very first swim trip overseas that I did, that was sort of like a swim tourism, I suppose you'd call it, was in Croatia. And they don't have a lot of sea life in the Mediterranean, but the water is just stunning. You know, it's clear and it's just has this color, this blue turquoise color to it, which I just find riveting. Um, we loved that. And then last year, we did a trip that also included a similar swimming thing in Crete in Greece, and that was stunning. But what I've noticed with swimming in that part of the world is there is very little sea life, especially around the Mediterranean, which is kind of blows your mind really, because you think that you're going to go somewhere where you're going to see lots of, fish and things, and it's just not there. It's very barren, and
Is
so
that
it's
from
different. Yeah.
overfishing or
Yeah, I
water?
think so. I believe so. Yeah, hundreds and hundreds of years of overfishing.
Mm,
Um, so, long before we came along.
yeah,
And so it's quite a different experience, especially if you come from New Zealand and you are used to seeing, just even in our harbour, we'll see the odd fish, or, around the south coast, we go to Island Bay and, you get to see all of, that sea life. And that's not a thing I've experienced overseas, but, or not where I've swum.
right.
Mm.
Yeah. That's the thing with swimming, isn't it? In new locations and every place is different and
Yeah,
its
yeah.
pros and its cons. And yeah, we're so lucky here with all the marine life in the marine reserve and
Oh, yeah,
what we
yeah.
get to
I mean,
see.
it's just stunning.
We talked before I started recording. We started talking about our dogs because you have dog and I have dogs, and I don't know if the microphone is picking up my snoring dog right now, but that's okay. And I was thinking about how dogs are part of the swimming community in a way because there are some people who have their dogs swimming with them in the harbour.
Mm,
Some of the dogs are pretty accomplished swimmers, or they're waiting at the shore for their owner to come out of the water.
mm.
Your dog, Doug, I know you like to take him with you sometimes when you go swimming or on walks. Does he like swimming?
Oh, every day, every
Oh,
day.
he's
Not,
a
yeah,
ocean
yeah.
swimmer too.
Yeah, he's more of I mean, he does swim and he loves to swim, but his main thing, if we're just at the beach and he's exercising, is he loves to chase stones, the splash of stones, or go and get a stick. So he just goes non-stop when he's in the water. And I have swum with him. Um, but not a whole lot actually. But he mainly because he's sort of still pretty young. I have swum with my other dogs that I've had in the past. He's just coming up to he's just over 2 now, and we still have that element of unpredictability. So I haven't done a whole lot of that with him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough. And in the introduction, I mentioned that you make jewelry. Is your jewelry, I know it's inspired by the ocean. Is it inspired by your swimming as well? When
Oh,
did you start making it?
I started. I went to the Learning Connection. So my background is I was an accountant.
Oh, I didn't know
So
that.
yeah, so I don't really have a particularly creative background in that sense. And back in 2015, I went off to the Learning Connection, which is an art sort of creativity school in Taita in Wellington. Um, and I the background to me going there was I was in my mother wasn't very well, and we'd been going through quite a few years of her with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and life was pretty grim, and I was aware that I needed to do something different. I needed to just make a shift in some way, and so I enrolled out there just really just to do anything, something that just got me out of myself, connected me to nature again. And through the course of that, I discovered jewellery making. And the reason why I loved the jewellery making was because I did a course that was a lost wax casting course, which is a process where you make models in wax and then you cast them into the metal that you want to use. And I had done glass casting and I had also done bronze casting. So I'd done bigger things, but I hadn't done small things. And I did a 1 week course of doing it for jewelry, and it just blew my mind what I could make. And it meant that I could melt wax and I could sort of create things that mimicked the water, really, drips and the movement of water. Um, and that was and that comes from my swimming, that comes from being in the water and being around water and seeing water moving and light going through water and waves and puddles and, just, so yeah, it all very much comes from it comes from my swimming and being around water, which I guess as much as anything has been from being out with my dogs over the years. And spending a lot of time at Roosa Bay and at Seatoon Beach, and once you start noticing things like the way water moves and rock pools and light on water and sea foam and all these things, like once you start, it just opens this world of like a window, I suppose, into like how incredible nature is and all the things that are there. And yeah, so that's all the largely most of the things that I make in my jewelry are inspired by either experiences in the water or just things that I've seen or textures that I've found or patterns or yeah.
I just love the way you described all of that. That was so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah. And also, I'm sorry about your mum, and that you had a challenging time, and I understand needing a sort of a creative, positive outlet sometimes when life is hard.
Yeah. I mean, we all go through it with our parents, I guess, or we will. If we're lucky, we won't. But at some stage, and those sorts of diseases are heartbreaking to watch. Absolutely heartbreaking to watch a person lose their ability to, both physically and mentally to, be able to express themselves is really, really awful. And it certainly has changed the way that I approach life now. I'm very much, you've just got to live it. Just get out there and
Exactly.
whatever that means, if it just means watching a sunrise or sitting at the beach and, listening to the water, like just live it.
Yeah. And having that sort of gratitude for the beauty of nature and that feeling of connection to it. And
yeah,
I know what you mean. That's partly why I've started creating this podcast, is going through something with one of my own family members. So it's
and it's tough. And for me, the sea, being by the sea or in the sea, has always been, and for as far back as I can think, if I'm struggling with something, even just going and sitting at a beach and looking at the waves, and it's just always been for me where I end up.
Yeah. I've heard it described as blue therapy, I think. Just how even looking at the sea, even if you're not getting in, just seeing it can help make you feel a little bit better.
Yeah. And also that thing of, the skins swimming, I think that was one of the things that tipped me over into doing that was that when you get into that cold water and what your body goes through and your brain goes through, it just gives you this sort of window of everything. There's not, you're blank, you're just in the moment, and that's just a wonderful thing when you're going through stuff.
Yeah, I've heard some people describe it as like a hug from the sea as well. Nice way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
For your jewellery, we'll put a link in the show notes so people can have a look and see it for themselves.
Okay.
It's so beautiful. And when I was looking on the website, I found a quote, something that you'd written, which I really loved as well. So I'll just read it here. You wrote, "I love the idea that there is beauty in aging. As the shine wears off, the true inner beauty and complexity of an object or person is revealed."
Yeah.
I thought it was really lovely, especially as I don't like the term middle-aged, but I think that's what I am. So
Yeah,
maybe
if you're
I'll accept it.
I'd hate to think what I am. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, the idea that the value of something improves with time. Yeah.
And I do believe that. And I think, you see that in the women that do the bobbing, I mean, I really do. I just think that we're so wrapped up in the bright, shiny things and beauty or just comes from layers and layers, and that's in people. I guess that's life experience and the things that make you who you are, and the things that I find, like I'm just so often I'll pick up something on the beach and I just, it'll be a shell that's all worn down or something, and then you get to see the inside of it and you go, oh my goodness, like that was hidden in there. And the only way you get to see it is when it's starting to break down. And that's, I just love the idea of that.
I do too, yeah.
Mm.
Well, Adrienne, I'm not ready for this conversation to end, but I've finished with my questions. But is there anything else you'd like to talk about that I haven't asked you yet?
No, I don't think so. I think that pretty much covers it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Adrienne.
Okay, thanks, Shona.
Part of Swim Chats.
It's, as I said at the beginning, it's a privilege, and I think what you're doing is great.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of Swim Chats. Please hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and we'll see you next time.